welcome back to Scale Up Week Practice Day, Panel 2, the evolution of leadership from entrepreneur to CEO. My role as MC is to introduce you to our moderator for the day, Raz Rusescu, and we will be operations manager for CTAC West. He'll play the role of introducing the panel. I'll give you a couple of quick notes and context for the beginning. This topic came up as a wonderful way to bring people together to discuss where company leaders discuss critical transitions that they've made personally from being an entrepreneur who started the business, grew the business, bought the business, and how that evolution of the business and their leadership converted into them becoming a CEO capable of managing a large-scale operation and continuing to grow and scale, and what that personal transformation actually looked like. Raz is joined by 3 people who were actually involved on strategic growth teams in the early days of Growth Catalyst as a program, both cohort 1 and 2. So Raz, I'm going to hand it over to you shortly in order to help them share their journeys and pull great questions that I know you've had ahead of time in order to look at successful leadership strategies. I'll introduce you shortly, or right now actually, as operations manager of CTAC. CTAC spearheads initiatives in advancing environmental and clean technologies from small to medium-sized enterprises. With over a decade of experience, Raz assists in the commercialization strategies and manages CTAC's energy efficiency program. He is a PEng, a professional engineer, project management professional, PMP, and a civil engineering degree from the University of Saskatchewan. Originally from Romania, Raz is a devoted father, a marathon enthusiast, we'll come back to what that really means, and promoting sustainability from both sustainability from a personal point of view and professionally in everything that he does. My role is to field Q&A. Want to encourage everybody who's participating today to leverage either the chat or the Q&A to bring up questions whenever it makes sense. We will consolidate them at the end, but if it makes sense to also interject during the panel, we will do so. We do have one more panelist who we are expecting, Dan McDonald, who's not quite here yet, but we'll pull him in as soon as we can. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to you. Cheers.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Peter. I'm not sure I really deserved it. It was great. But really, today is not about me. It's about 3 amazing entrepreneurs and people who have become leaders within their company. So I'm quickly going to introduce some of the people on the panel. I'm not going to say too much about them, and then I'll give it up to them to do a bit of an introduction of themselves. And I'll also take you through the agenda. So we have Tara, who is on the line today. She's the leader at Town and Country Kitchens out of Edmonton. They do some really incredible kitchen renovations and beyond. She promised me a really great deal on my next kitchen renovations, as long as I don't screw this up. So fingers crossed, everybody. We also have Wes on the line. Him and his wife, Jen, started 8 Ounce Coffee out of Calgary, Alberta. They specialize in exclusive coffee equipment for coffee geeks, baristas, and coffee shops all over Canada. I consider myself to be a wannabe coffee geek. And as I was looking through their website, I gotta say there's a lot of different equipment for brewing coffee, and I even came up with a bit of a slogan. Any way you want to brew it, 8 Ounce Coffee has the equipment to do it. I think I came up with that myself, but I could have stolen it off the website too. I'm not 100% sure. And then we also have Dan. Hopefully he will be joining us shortly, unless he already has and I didn't realize it. But Dan will be joining us shortly. He's the founder and CEO of BIS Safety Software. They really started doing online training way before it was cool to do so. They're some of the pioneers of cloud-based solutions for safety training and compliance. I will give it up to the rest of the panel to tell Dan how great of an introduction I did of him once he does join. So please keep that in mind. So today we're going to tackle a very important topic, the evolution of leadership, going from entrepreneur to CEO. I'm going to give it up to the panel to kind of introduce themselves and give us their general thoughts on this topic. We're going to dig in, then we're going to dig into some lessons on how they have evolved as leaders within their companies, what they were doing before and how they've evolved. We're going to talk about building high performance teams. And if you have any questions along the way that you would like us to tackle, please start putting them in the chat now, and we will try and address them as fast as we can. So I will go into the introductions first, and we're going to start with Tara, then go to Wes, and if Dan is on, we're going to go to him as well. But please, Tara, if you could introduce yourself, maybe also give us an idea of where you are with your business now, and then just your general thoughts on this particular topic. So Tara, on to you.
Thank you so much. So my name is Tara Prosky, and I am the owner of Town and Country Kitchens here in Edmonton. I am the fourth owner. It is a 46-year-old business. And since I came on as a general manager before I purchased, we had started our interior renovation division, largely to protect our schedule. We found that a lot of contractors were not taking care of the schedule, which would screw up our internal schedule. But also, since Growth Catalyst, I acquired another business last year called Rettle Kitchens, which is a luxury brand of cabinetry in Edmonton. I am new to entrepreneurial life. I never aspired to do that. I just deeply don't like people telling me what to do, especially when it is at the expense of ethics, morals, values, and taking care of clients. So in order to make sure that I didn't have to live with that stress, I decided to put my hat in the ring, and got into a position where I could take over and really grow the organizations.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tara. Any other thoughts on this particular topic before we move on to?
I am literally in this experience myself. I can say over the last 3 years of ownership that I have transitioned into a CEO from an entrepreneur, and always learning to grow. Curiosity is key, and say yes to everything, even if you don't want to, because then you'll see what adds value and what doesn't. There's lots of hidden nuggets that you don't necessarily know that you're going to have and be exposed to if you don't say yes.
Thank you very much for that. That's great. Okay, Wes, over to you. Introduce yourself. Tell us where you are with your business now and your general thoughts on this topic.
So I'm Wes. My name is Wes Farnell. I started 8 Ounce with my wife and my partner, co-founder and co-CEO, it's fair to say, about 12 and a half years ago. We have different backgrounds. I've worked in lots of different areas. Not unlike Tara, I worked in lots of different areas because I didn't like being told what to do a lot of the time when I thought there was a better way to do it. I think it's probably a regular stream amongst most entrepreneurs. And we really got into this business because we were passionate about supporting the places that we love to go. And at the time, that was beautiful cafes, specialty cafes all over the world. And we really from the start wanted to make sure that we could make those places more successful. We have around 45 employees now. We are around, we're a plus $15 million business. We love what we do. We love to create a great environment for our employees, for our suppliers. And really that's the driving reason for us to do this business and to be entrepreneurs. Really going from entrepreneur to CEO, I think, is an interesting move, and it naturally happens with growth if you want to continue to grow and have structure. But I'm fortunate enough to have my wife who has a range of skills that I do not. So it gives us a really unfair advantage in our business.
That's excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Wes. Very, very insightful. I love what you said, Tara. You always got to be curious, say yes to everything you possibly can. And Wes, yes, always very lucky to have somebody else on board. to be able to help. Welcome, Dan, to the panel. I see that you have joined. Just so you know, these guys can vouch for me. I did a really excellent introduction, and I said some really wonderful things about you. So with that, we are just in the lightning round right now. Just so you know, you are on mute, so you'll have to press the unmute button. But if you can give us just a quick introduction of yourself, tell us where you are with your business, and then just your general thoughts on this topic of evolution as a leader, going from entrepreneur to CEO. On to you, Dan.
Sounds good. Thanks. Sorry. My name's Dan McDonald, Biz Safety. We started 18 years ago. We're about 20 million in annual revenue, have about 120 team members between Canada, the US, and India. We serve about 1,700 customers. We have 2 million active users in the system, and still growing quite fast. Team's now, on its next journey. In terms of the topic, evolution from an entrepreneur to a CEO, a lot of change, a lot of interesting change. So I think a CEO, they're wired differently. They have that sixth sense of finding opportunity, and they're always on the hunt looking for things to fix or make better or create value. And it's that shiny lure effect where, to be good at growing one company, you've got to stay focused. You've got to be maniacal. You got to be, just focused on one thing. So I think that's the biggest challenge is not, getting excited about every opportunity that pokes its head in the door in the morning, and just staying focused on the same thing every day.
Thank you very much, Dan. Appreciate that. And we'll probably come back to that topic of staying focused a couple of times throughout this panel. So let's get into the first discussion, just your general evolution as a leader. Let's talk about who you were before you started. Why did you decide to get into this, to become an entrepreneur? And what have been some of the lessons that you've learned as a leader as your company has grown and as you have grown? So we're going to start with Tara again. We're going to go to Wes, and then we're going to go to Dan, and then we're going to maybe switch things up after. So Tara, on to you.
Thank you. I have a unique story. My first career, I was a court stenographer, and you're meant to be silent in the background. And I am 100% not. So that was not a viable long-term business career for me. And I just naturally learned over the years that I have strong problem-solving skills. I used to love being behind the scenes. I sat in every chair I could sit in. I said, pick me, and then I would Google how to do what I just signed up for. And so really, that gives me a strength that I can work on the back end of the business, make sure profits are there, make sure we know who our clients are. And it has bode well for me because I can't design kitchens. We would be bankrupt in like 2 days. But fortunately, I've learned that I do have the strengths to support the team, and everything is about the team. So, interesting journey. I never would have thought that I would be where I am today. And if I had known, I probably would have sabotaged myself in not being able to get there.
Mm-hmm. Any key lessons that you want to kind of share with the group about your journey as going from an entrepreneur kind of to a leader of the company?
Certainly. I've not always been included as a female. In my previous employment, I was with the company for about 11 years. And as I grew into the management, I, was excluded from the fishing trips or the trips to Vegas or all of the things. And that has been, hurt feelings back then, but that has been like a guiding North Star for me to make sure that in my leadership and in my leadership, but even in a CEO, that I don't lose sight of people, and they do have feelings, and make sure that I'm inclusive with, if I set up events, everybody is welcome. So hugely important to me in the inclusivity sector.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tara. Wes, tell us a little bit about your journey. What were you doing before? What got you into starting this, and just some of the lessons along the way.
Sure. So I think alluding back to my first statement, I've intentionally worked in a lot of different industries. I knew I wanted to do my own thing at some point, but wanted to get as much varied experience in different areas that I could. But I guess my last significant role was working for a bank in the UK, directing strategy for the retail banking footprint. And I'll always be speaking about my partner as well, because equally in what we've achieved and what we continue to. She was working for BBC as running all of their online for the food channel, BBC Good Food, if anyone knew it, and also then working in as a producer. And so, we had this range of skills, and my wife had other businesses previously. And I'll use this again. We had this unfair advantage going into the industry that we wanted to, and at the time it could have been any, because we were very we had a lot of experience in development and web-based. And so when we set up 8 Ounce as an online business, we really leveraged that. At the time, there was only 13 years ago nearly, but there was no Shopify. There was no easy way to go into the web, and we could do all that in-house. And so that really gave us an advantage that no one else had in our industry. And so, yeah, I think that the reason behind starting the business was because, again, it was something we'd fallen in love with the community. It was my hobby. Specialty coffee was my hobby, and it's what I did on the side. And whilst that wasn't necessarily my wife's hobby, she did fall in love with the community aspect of it. So when we moved back to Canada from the UK, it was a relatively simple decision to go into the industry. But it was actually it wasn't the first business we were going to go into. We were going to open cafes, and we just had a baby and just moved here. So we were really looking at covering shifts, doing all those type of things which you have to do when you have a cafe, and maybe not the biggest return in the shortest amount of time. We refocused on how we could help those cafes and those companies that we loved going to and being part of, by giving them other revenue streams. And so going on to sort of what we've learned, well, you learn constantly. We screw up a lot, but that's okay. And that's okay for everyone who works here as well, as long as we learn from it, as long as we take those lessons. But I think it was interesting what Tara finished it on was Tara finished talking about was people. And people being so important, and really all that is driven from your values. And your values should usually reflect your personal values as an individual, because that's the easiest way to live them. And we wanted to make sure from every experience that we had at every company we had worked, that we could take the best of what they provided, get rid of the worst of what they provided, and make sure where people came every day was an amazing environment to work in. And so we knew that if we got that right, then everything else would flow from there. And whether that's from benefits to support to treating people as individuals, to understanding that people have their own needs and requirements, but also balancing that with business needs. That's a really hard balance to have sometimes, but it's one really worth working at. So every decision we make, everything we do is based around our people and values. And of course, the fiscal sustainability of the business.
Excellent, thank you. People, values, and fiscal responsibility of the company. That is great. I think we've all heard the saying before: business is people, and I love how your values kind of drive your decision making in the business. Dan, over to you. Tell us a little bit about you. What was your background before? What made you decide to be an entrepreneur? And what have been some of the lessons that you've learned along the way as a leader? And you are muted right now.
Sounds good. So yeah, interesting journey for me. I started at the Brick years ago, about 18 years ago, 14 years at the Brick and 18 years in this business. So effectively 2 jobs most of my life. But I started I was in purchasing. And I thought I was smart. Turns out not so much. Because when you're running a big category, like a multi-million dollar category, to get sales was tough. I was putting on flyers, promotions, this, that. I was trying rebates, displays, training, like everything. And I thought, this will crush it. This will crush it. And nothing. The sales stayed the same. Just a flat line, not even a heartbeat, not even a little pulse. And then I started thinking, man, oh man, why can't I figure this out? I can't figure it out. And then I started, it hit me one day. How does Sam Walton at Walmart, like he's got sales that just are a rocket ship, and Invar Kamprad and IKEA and Bernie Marcus at Home Depot. And I started reading all these legendary leaders and what they did. And it turns out they all do the same thing. There's about 20, 21 different things that they all do religiously, consistently. And one of the number one things that they do more than anything else is just talk to the customers, talk to the frontline team. They spend 60, 70, and upwards of 80% of their time, the great ones, in the field, right? That management by walking around. And I started doing it at the Brick, and I was in the stores out in Ontario. And, I went up to one of the salespeople and I said, hey, one of the salespeople, I said, hey, congratulations, you're number 2. You're like just 2 sales away from your free trip to Hawaii for you and your family. And he goes, what trip to Hawaii? And I said, the big contest, you're number 2 in the country. Like this should be known. And he had no idea. And I went to the store manager and I'm like, what the heck's going on? And he goes, you guys don't get it. We get 400 emails a day, and there's only 2, 3, 4 things we can talk about. Computers is not one of them. And I'm like, wow. And it was evolutionary. So I learned a lot from that, learned a lot from talking to the people, and then actually quit to start Biz. And it started as a leadership training company. So that's all we did, is we would just travel around doing seminars and workshops and speaking on leadership management, those, business effectiveness. And that grew quite quickly. I was on a plane 23, 24 times a month. And my wife said, hey, your dream's turning into my nightmare. You're never going to see the kids grow up. You can't maintain this. So that's when we got into the e-learning, online learning, because most of the stuff we were teaching was theory, and we thought we could make a big impact. And then we ventured into a couple of companies requested that we help them in the safety side of things to take their safety online. We did that. And then in 2009, when the market crashed, leadership wasn't a thing. They said, hey, I've got to lay off 80% of my workforce. We're not doing a leadership course. Like, we can't afford it. But the safety stuff went through the roof. So at that point in time, that was a pivot as a company and a key important decision. And then we just stuck with that for the last almost 20 years. So that's how we got into the business. Lessons I learned. I mean, that reading thing, that was the big transformation. I became a junkie. I was reading 3, 4, 5 books a week at sometimes. Like, I had them in the bathroom, at the gym, listening to audio on the car at night. But that was my big lesson. Sorry, Raph.
No, that's great. Why did you decide to not keep the leadership training as well? Why didn't you stay with both?
Yeah. Good question. James Dyson, I think he was the one. He's like, you can only be one thing. So it's just rattled in my head for years. It's like, you can't be, Chinese food and pizza too. You've got to be one thing, right? And I'm no Stephen Covey or Brian Tracy, but I definitely believe that we could be world-class, best in the world for safety.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that was, it's also, I think Jim Collins brought it up in Good to Great. He discusses the 3 circles. What can you be best in the world at? And what drives your economic engine, and what are you passionate about? So those are the 3. I think it's called the hedgehog concept or something along those lines. Excellent points from all of you. Really appreciate that. And one of the key points that was brought up is that really business is about people. So I want to get into that point a little bit, into what are some of the strategies that you guys have used to build your team? How do you keep them motivated and pointing in the same direction? And any examples that you can use for the purpose of learning, please go ahead and do so. So maybe let's start with Wes, we'll go to Tara, and then we'll go to Dan again. So Wes?
Thanks. I guess it's following on from that previous statements. It's really important, and I'll refer to actually the previous conversations in the previous session as well, when they were talking about values and people, and having people feel like they are part of something. This isn't just a coming to work and leave at the end of the day. They have to have purpose. Purpose is so important. It's, you see when people retire and, die on the golf course, they lose their purpose straight away. So everyone needs some purpose. And so when we first started hiring, of course, you're hiring for a lot of time for personality when you first start a business, and for someone that you feel that you can work with. Maybe doesn't have the ideal skill set, but is a genericist and can do lots of different things that you need. And as we built this up and we started to grow the company, we knew that we wanted a structure there that could support, that could make people feel valued. Everyone knew what we were aiming for. Decisions were easy because they were around a set of values, and people felt like they were a bit of something a bit bigger. And it's hard to say that there was one thing, because although we had these values at the start of looking after each other, customers for everything, whatever it might be for any company, is we had to be successful fiscally to continue to grow the environment for the people who are working here. So as we became more successful, we could add more benefits, better benefits. We regularly have meetings. We regularly praise people. I mean, this was again in the previous conversation, in the previous session, was talking much about people's psychological well-being and feeling great where they work and wanting to contribute and feel like they're being successful in what they do. So again, it gives a purpose. So whether it's weekly meetings with all the team, whether it's having people discuss about values wins that they've had over that week, and people calling out their colleagues for doing something amazing. Whether it's just walking around, most of that day, back to the point that was made earlier, a lot of my time is walked around checking on people, seeing how they're doing, what's going on, what are the challenges, how has your day been, how's your family, those things which make people feel energized and invigorated to work here and want to come in every morning and aren't waiting for the bell to chime to walk out the door. And so, it's hard to nail down one thing, but there are so many different processes that we've put in over time. Again, some of the biggest things are just walking around and talking to people, having those conversations and checking in. And, it's interesting in our business because we have a logistics, really a wall literally separates two sides of our business, from the logistics side to the shipping, all those things, and the office side. But you've got to break that down. So you've got to have those, whether it's a monthly team meal where everyone gets together, you mix people up so people are integrated, whether it's putting a little social committee together, so actually people within the business and not you are driving those interactions, making budget available for those things where people can feel that they are part of a team. Because when people have relationships with other people in that team, they care about how their actions impact them. And those are the things that lead to development and growth of the business. So lots of different levers to pull. I could talk all day, but there's other people I need to talk about the different things that we do. But ultimately, it's making people feel valued so they want to contribute and grow that business.
That's excellent. Very well. Did you have something to chime in, Dan, before we move on to somebody else?
No, I just thought that was very good.
Very well done. Yes, and hire people for personality. Do you have any tips on how to do that, Wes? It can be easy.
No, we started just by hiring by our values. So if we would, we would assess, and some of these, we do it based on, discussions and sitting down with people. We would assess, well, do you fulfill our 3 values? Is there a tick next to each of these boxes? And because if they do, we know that they can work within the team and the people who are here. But that did evolve because it just wasn't enough as we grew, and especially as we are hiring more specialized positions. And so then we added. And it's not an original thing. It's, these aren't things that, most of us are taking experiences from other people and melding things together. But it was, do those people get it? And we actually hire and fire by all these things. The values being the first. And the next 3 things are, do they get it? Do people get what we're doing? Do they want to be able to do it? Do they actually want to come in every day and contribute and help us grow and develop? And then the last one is really important, is, are they capable? And there's a bit of flex on the capable. Is it they capable, can they do it now? Or are they that right type of person? We know we can get them there. But you have to be able to tick in all those 6. And it used to be, we had some flexibility. Well, it's 4, is it 4 out of the 6? Is it 5? Well, no. If we want A players in the business, and everyone wants A players in the business to work with, then it has to be all of them. And so we review by those metrics, we hire by those metrics, we fire by those metrics. And just as a note, we will, because of their values, we will always try and get people to that point, but there has to be a cutoff. You need hire before you need it, fire at the right time, before it becomes a bigger issue.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Wes. Tara, we are going to go over to you. What have been some of the strategies that you have used to build your team? What are some of the strategies that you're using to communicate with your team? Tell us a little bit more.
So this has been a struggle for me. Even when I came on here as a general manager, we don't typically have turnover, and we have what I call legacy employees. So there's people here that have been here 20, 30 years. So then I come in and I thrive on change, and they do not. So, I've rocked the boat. I've, created anxiety, and I've also learned that I have blind spots in my communication style. So really my evolution has been to slow down. I call them thought bubbles now. I've actually seen where I'll go up to someone in an excited fashion, be like, I have an idea, and they almost shrivel because I have ideas every day. And so, when there's a physical reaction from your employees that you can see, it's a sign that says, whoa, like slow down. So I've really learned to, when I have ideas, and I call them thought bubbles now, because I got tired of the word idea, I really talk to my integrators who thrive on that, and I keep that away from my legacy people because it does cause anxiety. I've learned that technology implementation is almost the same fear as public speaking and death. So really change management, beginning with the end in mind, really mapping things out before I take them live, because it just is a roller coaster. I recently listened to an audiobook called Surrounded by Idiots, and it really talks about people's personalities in color format: blue, yellow, green, red. And I add that to the learnings that I've had through DISC personality assessments and other leadership books. And I've really been able to remove the abrasive tendencies that I may have and work with their personality instead of trying to force them consciously or subconsciously to be a different thought leader or analyzing things a different way. So I use all kinds of ways to help with this, and I have conversations human to human, aside from work, in my office, a one-on-one. How are you as a human doing? How is your family through COVID and interest rates and inflation? I don't think we've ever seen a more stressed out workforce, and so I want to be there to be a safety net and have them be at least 8 hours a day where they can just focus on work and not if there's another agenda, or is there job security, or how am I going to pay my mortgage? So that's worked well for me.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tara. That is a very interesting idea on talking to your integrators who then talk about your ideas to some of the other folks. You're dealing with legacy employees. In our experience, we've had other clients who are dealing with maybe some of the Gen Z, and same thing. They'd come into the boardroom, they say what their ideas are, and all the Gen Z people are eyes wide open, going, "Oh boy." And then the leader would leave, and she said that there was somebody on her team that was always there that could kind of translate and calm down all the Gen Z generation. So it was very helpful for her. She almost had a translator on her own team that was there, and then said, "Okay, nobody panic. Everybody, this is what we're gonna do. This is the plan." So very, very interesting perspective there. Dan, over to you. Give us your feedback on some of the strategies that you've used over the years to hire people and to keep them motivated and pointing in the same direction.
Yeah, good question. So, if I'm honest, I don't have a lot of talent in any area. I can't code, I can't spell, can't write, I can't draw, I can't, there's not a lot of talent here. But the one thing I always did have is I had a great nose, a great sixth sense for picking people. And I remember even back when I worked at the Brick, I'd hire an assistant buyer, and I'd scout around and I'd find somebody and I'd hire them, and 5 days later, 8 days later, the VPs are over at my desk going, "Hey, we promoted your guy. It's amazing. He's going to be so good over here." And I'm like, "Oh my God," like I worked for months, and then, I'd go find another guy a week later. They're like, "Whew, Dan, oh man, this guy's going to be great. We're going to move him over to head this department over here." And one of the guys, it took me, I don't know, 6 months. I had to get tickets from Bill and took him to the hockey games and took him to the football games, and finally got him over to the dark side. And he didn't even start. Like, he didn't even get into the desk, and they said, "Hey, we're going to promote him." And now, I think 18 years later, he's my boss's boss, still there. And I always had that good nose. That was the one little thing that I was good at. And I find 95% to 90, and I'm guessing here, but it's a huge amount of the population. They're terrible at picking people. Like, they just, it's like, "Oh, we should hire this girl or this guy." And I'm like, did you interview the same person? Like, and sometimes I'd let, get out of their way, don't be a micromanager, get out of their way. And I'm like, I don't recommend it. Just, but if you need them, you want them, you think they're great. And 90 days later, they're like, "Oh my God, what a train wreck. Oh my God, we got to get rid of her." And I'm like, and so it just hit me that just some people just don't have that skill. It's just like, I can't draw. Some people can't pick talent. And I've only met, I think, maybe 3 people in my life. And one of them, we hired him for marketing. He was, I think he was writing blogs or something. And we had to hire 30 people in 30 days or something. Like, we were just growing so fast. And the interviews, we do probably, God, I think we're doing 200-300 interviews for every one hire or more. In some cases, I think we did more than 1,000 interviews for one role, if it's a key role. And we just couldn't keep up. So we asked them to just, come into that department and do that for, I think it was, I don't know, I said 90 days. And then 90 days later, he did a phenomenal job. And I said, "Okay, I promised you could go back." And he's like, "I don't know if I'd bring a lot of value, there. I think I could do something here." And I'm like, "Yes." Yes. So he's been head of recruitment for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. So that's number one for us, is just making sure that you find people that can just have a nose for talent or a nose for good people. That's number one. Motivating the team. Yeah, I don't know about that one. That one to me is, leaves me feeling kind of dirty. It's more finding people that are motivated already. Because if you got somebody, you meet those people, right? There's zero motivation, and it's like nothing in life can help you. There's just, if they don't have it in them. Now, what happens from my point of view is I see a lot of people that have good intentions, have ideas, have motivation, And man, oh man, do we do a good job in day-to-day business to beat that out of them, right? And the whole idea is not to beat it out of them, like to let them stay motivated, say, hey, what can we get out of your way? Well, this rule is stupid. Boom, let's get rid of it. This procedure doesn't make sense. Boom, do we need it? Get rid of it. And if we can do a good job at that, motivated people stay motivated. And again, this is just what I've seen, my point of view, my little bit of experience. And then communicate, I don't really do a good job of that. I think one of the big things that I feel, and this is more of our company philosophy, something that's dear to my heart, is a very open environment. Like if you were to look at our office, it's it's a size of a football field and it's all open. Like literally you could have a full football game in there and not worry about hitting a wall. And it's just all desks, little pods of desks, and everybody is very open. And the bigger offices, they'll have 5-6 people, and desks in there. And we keep that, like there's not a lot of people outside of maybe human resources, people and culture, that'll have their own office. There's very few people, maybe legal, our lawyer or something, but outside of that, almost everybody's out in the open or in a group or in a pod. But those are my 3 things for what they're worth from my experience.
I appreciate that. That's really great. I mean, you guys have kind of built your own internal recruitment team, and hire based on your gut. You got to find the right person that also has that gut. That is a lot of interviews to go through for one position. Holy moly.
It's worth it.
But
if you don't want headaches and you don't want people problems, it is so, you might spend an extra 15 hours, saves you 500 guaranteed over the next 5 years. Oh my God.
Even looking at the 3 of you, all of you have kind of mentioned throughout your as you were talking, some of you, Dan, I think you said you don't have a lot of talent. I disagree. Tara, you said that you don't do kitchen renos. Wes, you give all the credit to Jen. I don't think there's any particular skill that all of you necessarily have in common, but one thing that you seem to do really well is hire the right people that can fill in those gaps, those shortcomings, which is really, really great. I wanna tackle. There's a question here that I wouldn't mind tackling. I'm not sure if I'll necessarily say it right, but Pete can always interrupt me if he wants. But how do we have any of you ever experienced imposter syndrome? In going from that role of entrepreneur to CEO. Tara laughed first. I saw Dan put up his hand as well. So why don't we go with Tara and then Dan and see if Wes wants to fill in anything else there.
I think I had a PhD in imposter syndrome for years. It's real. There's no definitive guidebook on what you sign up for. I think I really saw that once I had signed the papers for owning the company and then being responsible for every payroll and every time that you owe the government money. I'm going to say that what I've learned is the wonderful effects of compounding time. Small incremental gains every single day with time will transform you. I do not feel like the same individual that I was 6 months ago, let alone 2 years ago. And really, Mel Robbins' high 5 habits, it sounds really corny, but when it's tough, I literally look at my face in the morning and I high 5 the mirror. And psychologically, you cannot have a bad thought about yourself in the act of a high 5. So I've done a lot of good things, removing myself as much as possible from social media. I will never be, super tall and thin. I will never have a PhD. I've just learned to love who I am and how I treat people. And that's the greatest thing. And I think I do a lot of volunteering. I'm a Rotarian. One of the best ways to find gratitude and be thankful is to see the strife that's outside of our bubbles. And I think it mix all of that up, get rid of, binge watching Netflix, read some books, listen to podcasts, and you will find that you are in a different position with the ability to have time.
Thank you very much, Tara. High five to that. Awesome.
Thank you.
Dan, over to you.
Yeah, I had it really bad younger. So when I was at the Brick, when I first started in a senior position in head office, because I didn't even finish high school, I don't think. And I remember the first week in the buyer position, or the first month or something, I was invited to go on a private jet, and we went to Ontario, and they said, hey, we're going to integrate a Radio Shack in 200 Brick stores. And we met with all the VPs at Radio Shack, and they had, I'm pretty sure, 60 of them. And there's this giant U table in a gymnasium that had 70 people. And they all had 15, names in their title that I couldn't even pronounce. And they went around the room, and I'm like, yeah, Dan, next. And I just felt so out of place. And they're like, you're going to run this. You're going to run the whole thing. You're in charge of it. And, you're also in charge of this and in charge of that. And people were coming to me saying, hey, here's the TV wall we're building in the West Edmonton Mall. Here's a new format we're going to do in Montreal. Here's a new, and I'm like, why do they keep asking me? There's a TV commercial that we're doing in my area, and they're like, okay, which model do you like and what dress? And, we're going to revolve her on a, thing and do the camera around her. And do you like that? And I'm like, yes. And I just had the biggest imposter syndrome. I'm like, somebody's going to come out of the closet and tell them, who this guy really is. Like every day I had that fear. But over time, after, a lot of the reading, a lot of the discovery, a lot of the stuff, there is no place in the world that I'm better suited for than this job at this time, at this point right now. Like, I just feel, not arrogant, confident. I don't want it to sound, it's just comfort, that quiet, like I would never speak it, but just for learning sake, I've never felt more confident that I'm in the right role right now. But leading up to this, oh man, going into that role at the Brick, anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'd love to hear Wes's thoughts on his, if he's got.
Yeah, thanks. It's, I was little going further back in my life. I was phenomenally shy when I was younger. So I always had imposter syndrome when I was younger. I wasn't accepted into places. You can pick anything. I didn't have groups of people I hang out with. I was just super shy. And at some point, I was so tired of being that person, though I'm not going to do this anymore. And it took me about 2 years to not be shy anymore. And it was tobacco. It was like, you just say, yeah, you do things. You put yourself in positions that are intentionally difficult and painful. And I did it for 2 years. And one day I was like, I'm not pretending anymore. And so since that point, if I've gone into a position or done something, I'm there for a reason. So I've really not had that imposter piece. Whether someone has hired me to do a position or I've blagged my way into a position, which has happened a lot. For some reason, I've got there and I've got something to add. So I haven't felt that. And consequently, when we got to this business, I was excited to do this, to see what I could do well and where I'd fall down and where I needed to get people into support and all these different things that we did. And so, yeah, I don't have that, and I haven't had that for a long time. I guess the only time occasionally is if I'm meeting potential customers or suppliers of very large businesses. You sometimes think, how did I end up quite here? I wouldn't say it's imposter, but it's like, it's interesting, as everyone around this table again is papered. Has something about them, something about what they do, this amazing history of what they've done, and I'm there. But if you're there, there's a reason you're there. You've earned your place there. It's you to show that you can deliver on it and do it, but you're there for a reason. So I'm I think I'm quite thankful that I got rid of that feeling a long time ago. But I totally understand it from when I was a very young, shy, long-haired rocker. So there you go.
I'd like to see a picture of that, Wes.
Oh, I've got videos.
That's great. We have about 9 minutes left. I really appreciate your guys' openness around this topic. It's a really great topic. One of the sayings that I've heard many times before, and as an entrepreneur, maybe even in other personal things, but you really have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. There's always going to be situations where you're going to feel uncomfortable, and the more you put yourself in those situations, the more comfortable you're going to get with them. So thank you very much for sharing all of those. I would like to pull a story as I visited with some of you. I'd like to pull a story out of Dan quickly on the just importance of vision, of having a vision. You've shared with me, Dan, your car ride with your previous boss from the Brick. Do you remember that particular story?
Yeah, like it was yesterday. Yeah, real quick, Bill Comrie, the guy that started the Brick Warehouse across Canada. We were in his truck, his SUV, and we are going to through Calgary, and it was his son, Paul, me, Troy Davies, who's like, I think the CEO of a big furniture company, the CEO at the time, Kim Yost, and Bill. And the three of us are just doing a store tour. And we're the three kind of young upcomers or whatever. We're doing a store tour, and the owner and the CEO wanted to come along for the ride, kind of last minute. And he pulls over the car, on the side of the road. We're like on a freeway, pulls over the car and gets out and just starts running through the field and through the grass. And we're, the CEO, Kim, he looks back at me, he's like, what's he doing? And everybody's like, don't know. And I get out and I'm like, okay. And I walk over and go through the grass and I'm like, hey, Bill, everything all right? And he looks up and he's looking at the top of the hill and he's like, do you see it? And I'm like, not sure I do. And he goes, yeah, we do a big brick store here. We do a warehouse here. We'd have some lights hitting the building here, the big glowing brick sign here. And we do this here. That way, everybody coming into Calgary from this road would see the brick sign coming in. And I kid you not, 3 years later, I'm driving down that same road and I had to stop, pull over, get out of the car in awe, and exactly how he described it. And I was like, oh my God. And after, and I don't know how accurate my rendition of the story is, after he sold the brick to Leon's for quite a few dollars, he actually embarked on a project. And from what I hear, it was a 30-year project to build a city in Mexico. And it was like sewage lines and golf courses and libraries and, malls. And he had 11 lawyers on it. And he was but that's how big, like, who thinks that I should build a city? Like, and my thinking, I remember starting out like my biggest thinking was, man, oh man, if one day I could get Rob Christie to be the voiceover and come do our training videos and stuff. And in the first year we had that. Now it's, my thinking's evolved and gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And that was one of the biggest lessons I learned, on top of the thousands of lessons from Bill Comrie. But that thinking big is so powerful. And when you can think that big, it becomes an incredible thing.
Perfect. Thank you very much for sharing that, Dan. We're kind of in the last 5 minutes here. I'd like to give it to each of you to give your last 3 key takeaways. There's companies, there's founders out there that are looking to grow their companies. Maybe they're currently growing. What would be your 3 key takeaways or lessons for them that you want to leave with this panel? So we'll go over to you, Tara, and then Wes and Dan again.
Thank you. 3 key takeaways for me is find out what your blind spots are. Communication, if that's a blind spot, that has to be solved right away. The other one is get a coach. I have a coach. I'm a part of Tech Canada. I'm a part of WPO. Say yes. Number 3 is be around smarter people than you. I am so protective of the energy that's around me. If people are negative, I'm out. If people are smarter, be a sponge. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen more than you talk, and you will be successful.
Thank you very much, Tara. Wes,
Thank you.
over to you.
Only 3. Wow, this is hard. I guess there's like 3 every few minutes of the day that we learn new ones. I would say you've got to have resilience. You've got to build resilience in yourself because shit happens. And you've got to be able to look at challenges and turn them into opportunities. And to follow that, you've got to be looking for constant improvement. If you sit where you are, you stay where you are, you'll eventually start slipping back. Other people will come and take over the space and just dominate the industry that you're in away from you if you're not constantly improving and evolving. And then values. You've got to have, and when I use values, I'm talking about that goal, that vision, that whole piece of directional structure, that people understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and what levers get them there. Having those things in place have made it easy to hire people. We don't lose people unless we haven't been able to develop them up. We have a great reputation in the industry, and it forms the core of who and your people are.
Thank you very much, Wes. Dan, over to you.
I only got one. Tara took it. It's just, honestly, I couldn't quote her enough. Learn from others that have already done it. Learn. And my advice is, those books are cute. That say the 4 pillars of leadership and this and that from somebody who's never really created anything great. But if you read the founders of, the Apple and Google and Home Depot and Walmart and on and on and on, if you read enough of those lessons from people that have done great things with their companies, that's all you need to know. The tech groups, phenomenal. The EO groups, phenomenal, because you get into that thinking that is anything is possible, and learn. The only piece of advice I'd leave with, the one thing I learned from those books, that's the most powerful thing we've ever done, is it's so hard to stay connected to the customers, and you got to fight every day to talk to them. And how do we do better? What can we improve? How do we make it better? And if you do that every day and you teach your team to do that every day, you will become unstoppable.
That's gold. Thank you very much, everybody. Pete, I'm gonna give it to you. I only left you 1 minute. I said I'd leave you 2. So
Okay, Dan gave me a phenomenal transitional point, actually, able to give everybody a bit of a flash on who our third panel is and what the topic is more specifically, which is customer growth engines, and specifically how to create scalable acquisition systems. So stick around. 15 minutes from now, after the intermission, we'll be back into that. I want to thank all 4 of you. Absolutely phenomenal. Given that we are all in Alberta and we are all Albertans, I do want to make sure that the particular color of orange is resonating against this blue background, just in case there's an opportunity for either one of the Edmontonians to want to say a few things about last night and what's coming.
The Oilers have aged me significantly. I feel like I need heart medicine, but we're gonna just kick ass and take names.
It is amazing. I was texting with Raz in the background, wondering if, because they're such high performers, right? You in your own right are high performers. That's why you're here. That's why you're where you're at in your career. That's why you're so passionate about where you want to get to. it is the transition from entrepreneur to CEO and leadership, as you've described. So thank you for that. The wonderful thing about watching these younger players do everything that they're doing and emerge after 3 games, right? It's almost like they in the moment getting outside of themselves and saying, we deserve to be here. And
Well, the
they're
pressure's off. Down 3 games to nothing in the final series. The pressure's off.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're
Thank
going to go
you.
to intermission. During intermission, you'll see some advertising from our sponsors. We're, of course, grateful to everybody who's involved in order to make sure that we can pull off the entire week of Scale Up Week, not just today and practice day. So we welcome you during the intermission to grab a coffee, grab a water, whatever suits you, and to sit back and enjoy a little bit of promotional advertising from those who are able to support and make this possible. And I'll see you back live in 15 minutes for the next panel. We'll go backstage, folks.